and I hope you are having a wonderful, wonderful Friday. I hope you are having a good week. I hope you are staying safe and healthy. I hope you're getting vaccinated if you can. Hello, seeing people come in. Just let some people join as we get into our Q&A for today, Friday, March 19th. And while we're doing that, before we get into it, I'm going to just go ahead and let you know about a couple awesome things that are coming up. Hello, Trombone Clips. Hello, Peterson. Hello, Nico. Some great things. June, the Jazz Trombone Bootcamp is back. I'm looking forward to being able to have even more people involved this year. We're going to have multiple levels of participation. If you want to join and be part of the master classes, if you want to just watch, you can check that out. Nick Finzer Jazz Trombone Bootcamp in June. And that's happening in June. And then also next week, I'm excited I'm going to be launching a brand new Rhythm Changes course. So in the Rhythm Changes course, Series 1, we are going to learn 8 tunes. We're going to talk about the harmony, the melodies, the rhythm, the improvising, the piano, all sorts of things. And so that's launching next week. Pre-orders will open next week, March 23rd. And then the week after is the official launch on March the 30th. So I'm excited about all of those things. Hello, Kevin. Hello, Andrew. Hello, Richard. Thanks for joining, everyone. Feel free to drop in your questions for today's Q&A, and we'll sprinkle it in, maybe with a little playing, maybe with a little warming up, maybe just questions. We'll see how it goes. And we also have today, if you are part of the virtual studio, we have our virtual studio class right after this at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central. We'll be jumping on Zoom to have our studio class. And so if you don't know what that is, you don't know what the virtual studio is kind of the word for all of the courses, all of the online content that I put out. And then we have a subscription model where you can get new lessons every week, and kind of is just everything that I'm putting out on an ongoing basis. And then there's virtual studio classes once a month where we get together and play for one another and get feedback, kind of like a college studio class, but for all of us online. So I'm excited about that as well. What's up, Zach Guitar? What's up, Tito? What's up, Ryan? Kevin, I see a bunch of questions here, so we'll just jump right into it. Kevin asks, because this is something I was working on this week, I'm putting together now. I mentioned about the Rhythm Changes course, but after the Rhythm Changes course, I'm moving towards putting together a drone course. So the drone course is all about intonation, all about this next question. Kevin says, I've heard you talk a lot about practicing intonation with drones, but what do you think about using a tuner? So Kevin, I'll ask you this question back, and I think you'll know my answer. Do you tune with your ears or your eyes? You tune with your ears. So using a tuner is irrelevant, because you could play right on zero, but that doesn't mean you're playing in tune with the other people around you. So I don't use a tuner, always use a drone. If I'm going to use a tuner, use just the pitch on there and match, because it doesn't matter how many cents sharp or flat you are. It just matters if you develop a good inner sense of pitch and inner ear, for pitch and playing in tune. So that's what I think about that. All right, so I'm going to go to YouTube here with a question. Brian Soy asks, worst gig you've ever played? Worst gig musically or worst gig logistically. There's been many bad logistic gigs, and it depends on what you value and what you judge these things by. You want to say like worst travel was probably one of my favorite gigs, but worst travel, when we played at the Umbria Jazz Festival, the travel was really just funny, laughably funny. Overnight to Portugal and then to Rome from there for one day, play the gig the next day, next morning, fly out super early through Istanbul to get back to New York. If you look at a map, you'll realize how crazy that really is in 3 days. So that's one thing. But the worst gig I ever played was just like an event gig that went from call time of 4 p.m. to 4 a.m, and it was still going, and there was no end in sight. So that's probably the worst gig, just like in terms of I don't know. But then if you change it onto a different story here and then say like worst gig in terms of being maybe embarrassing, there was a gig I had to play once wearing a Robin Hood costume. So that was on a radio show for Sirius XM for a group that will remain nameless. The group was fine. It's just the situation. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And so I laugh. I laugh when I think about that one. But it's pretty funny. See a lot more people joining. Feel free to drop in questions. What's up, Jonah? Matthias, Ricardo, A Peel Music. Feel free to leave some questions. Yeah, I'm not going to bring anyone into the stream today. Sorry. Trombone clips. What does a typical warm-up look like for you? Well, there's a bunch of videos out on YouTube that I've put together that have a bunch of the warm-up things that I'm thinking about more recently. But I do have my trombone here, so I could talk a little bit about it. But just to break it down easily, it mostly has to do with long tones, pitch bends, and lip slurs. Pitch bends is something that I do, and trying to get things condensed down to the least possible amount of exercises in the shortest amount of time. So there's a video I put up recently, like a real life 2-minute warm up before I had to go and give a master class, and that was just a real life look at, like, if I have 2 minutes, like, what am I going to do? Kind of even like right now. Like I haven't played today yet. I've been doing other work this morning, getting ready to launch this rhythm changes course. And so there's a couple of things that I might do. So I might think about playing. I got to make sure I get the mix right here. I think about playing long tones, just like a regular old long tone, or I could think about playing like a song. I've been thinking about this tune for all we know. Maybe I'll just try to play the melody of that to warm up, and then I'll try to demonstrate some pitch bend exercises after that. So. So just maybe playing through a tune or something like that could be a good way to warm up. And then another thing that I really like to do is go ahead and do like pitch bends. So I stole this. I stole it. I borrowed it from a lesson I had with Elliot Mason years ago. I don't know how many years ago now, but he was talking about playing false tones in the lower register and going all the way down to pedal B flat and just using like, thanks trombone clips. For the claps, appreciated. So just doing like major triads down into the false tone register, maybe on E flat and down. That's a hard one. But those are a couple things that I do to get warmed up. Long tones, pitch bends, lip slurs, all those kind of things. Fairly standard stuff, but hopefully that inspires you to pick up your own, create your own warm-up routine, because that's what it's ultimately about. Everybody has their own thing that they got to do, So, all right. Bunch of questions from Brian today. Thanks for joining, Brian. How many different people do you have as your main inspirations for your improv language, and who are they? Yeah, I mean, I think it's like a lot of your early influences are what kind of stick with you for a long time. Oh, a good question from Alexander just came in. I'm excited to get to that one. Main influences. Okay, so in terms of trombone, I always say it, I have kind of like a big five. And so the big five is J.J. Curtis slide, J.J. Curtis slide. And then I love Steve Davis, Wycliffe Gordon, Steve Turre. That's six. That's like a main six, but also Robin Eubanks is in there, so that's seven in terms of trombone stuff. But the main three for me, J.J. Curtis slide. And then in terms of like opening up the harmonic language from there, it's Pat Metheny, Michael Brecker, Herbie Hancock, Chick Corea, and I had a long phase of being into Joshua Redman. So there's another five, and I would say that between those seven and those five, that probably accounts for most of the influences I have in terms of really digging deep into, who are those influences and the type of language that I'm going to play and all that kind of stuff. So there you go. There's seven trombonists and five other artists that would be it. So one more time, that's J.J. Curtis slide, and I said Turre, Steve Davis, Wycliffe Gordon, Robin Eubanks, that's trombonists. And then from there, going into other people, I said Michael Brecker, Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock, Pat Metheny, Joshua Redman would be like another five people that were really influential to me early on, And I think that those early on influences, they don't really go away. They're kind of the essential influences that you have, And obviously, like Duke Ellington is in there big time, and his whole band. And mostly I take from that is just like the idea of writing for people, writing compositions that feature emotion and story, not just tunes. All right, Alexander, this is a good question. What's your favorite chord? I think my favorite chord is F major 7 sharp 5, because coming from like an A melodic major chord scale. So this is the one that I mean. It's kind of a disconcerting, bright sound. That melodic major is kind of a favorite of mine, so I like to use that. That's my favorite chord. I wrote it into one of my favorite tunes that I wrote for my band called With Gratitude. If you go on Spotify or whatever, and you can find With Gratitude from my first record. Those are, that's a favorite chord. It's in there in a couple varieties. Charlie. Yes. All right. Thanks for tuning in, man. Check out that F major 7 sharp 5. I know it sounds like a science project, but it's a pretty emotional chord, I think. I really think. Ooh, the other chord that I like. Sorry, now Alexander got me excited about chords. I like a major chord with the 4th or a sus chord with a major 3rd in it, like either on top, like if you play like something like that, where the major 3rd, the E natural, in this case of C, the E natural being on the top, and then having the F in the voicing below. That's a good one. Stole that from Maria Schneider, who definitely stole it probably from Gil Evans, who probably stole it from somebody else, maybe Ravel or Debussy or something. One of those. So those are some favorite chords. Oh, Christian. This is a good question. I have several videos about this on YouTube. I can see that you're watching from YouTube. So why don't you head on over to my channel? You can see a lot more information here than I'll get into right now. Of course, I will answer your question. The short answer is both. When appropriate, I mostly double tongue because I think it's cleaner. Doodle tonguing can certainly be clean. It's not clean for me. And that could just be a lack of time that I've put into it. But I kind of go with, and again, I'll attribute this where attribution is due. From a master class I saw with Marshall Gilks, he was talking about, and he might not even remember who saying this, but talking about just whatever way that you would say a rhythm. So whether that was with a double or a doodle tongue, it should be the same way that you play it. So if that's or I think that there's certain situations where you want a smoother doodly kind of sound, and sometimes you want more of that. You want that clean crispness, and that's just a musical thing. I think that's a musical preference, for me at least. That I prefer things to be clean, sound clean. Come across with clarity. That's a theme throughout, the things that I've created over the years and that I teach in my studio is always clarity, clarity, clarity of sound, of concept, of melodic ideas, of harmonic ideas, just knowing what you're doing and making an informed decision one way or the other. So there you go, Christian. Do I prefer, if I had to pick one, I prefer double tongue. If I could only live with one. All right. I see more questions here from Brian. Who are your favorite composers of standards? I always thought that Cole Porter wrote the best standards. Big band composers, Ellington, Maria Schneider, Gil Evans are some good ones. Oh, we had a little pause there on Instagram. That's weird. Sorry, guys. So Duke Ellington, and then Maria Schneider, Gil Evans, Bob Brookmeyer are some favorite big band composers and arrangers. Orchestral composers, I don't know that I really have that many. I think Stravinsky is interesting. I think, I think like minimalist composers are interesting in jazz and relating them to jazz. I think 21st century composers are interesting in comparing them to jazz and thinking about how they relate to jazz. But, I think that, I don't have a lot of orchestral composers to list off for you. But for standards, Cole Porter, because there's a lot of songs he likes. Speaking of, Chick Corea, who passed away recently, he recorded a bunch of Cole Porter songs. A lot of people recorded Cole Porter songs. But So in Love is one. All Through the Night. I Concentrate on You. I don't know. Cole Porter wrote a good one. Jerome Kern wrote some good ones too. Yesterday's is nice. But I feel like Cole Porter was the most adventurous, maybe, of those like big composers. But then there's the lesser known ones as well. But if I had to pick one of those type of people that wrote like show tunes for jazz that ended up being jazz standards, I would definitely go ahead and pick Cole Porter. So for whatever that's worth, Cole Porter. All right. Seeing some more questions here before we get back to playing some more maybe. Okay, Alexander, he wrote, I really like your trombone covers, solo trombone covers. Do you improvise them or arrange or both? Yeah, both. We were talking to a student this week about this, that everything in jazz is not totally improvised all the time. It's kind of like you can create a framework. Chick Corea talked about this. JJ did this, where you're improvising, but you have ideas about certain things that you might play in certain places, or you have ideas about what's possible in certain places on a tune, or like 20 ways to get back to the top, or 10 ways to finish your solo. You have like an array of options, and you kind of stitch together those like thoughts, so it's still improvising, still it's a framework, it's still improvising, but you don't have to think that you have to reinvent the wheel every single time. And you can use the things that you've learned, been taught, to create something new each and every time. So in terms of arranging those solo projects, some of it is improvised and some of it is not. Like, go for it, Alton. So he's going to steal it. See, you already have probably heard that I stole stuff from Marshall and Elliot already. In this just today's stream, let alone my whole life. So in terms of like Single Pedal for a Rose, for example, I play that one kind of the same most of the time. But on that day, I was like, man, I'm going to play an intro. I never played that intro before on Single Petal of a Rose that I put out like 3 weeks ago. It's going to be on an upcoming EP coming out in a couple months. But yeah, so that was improvised, but the rest of it, kind of the framework of it was worked out. I Wish I Knew that I posted the other day. I see there's a question about that. Man, what's going on? All right, well, Instagram just totally crashed. Anyway, so we'll focus on over here. But yeah, there's a lot of good questions coming in. Thank you, everyone. Sorry for my slight distraction trying to get this stream back up. But yeah, so there's a mixture of worked out and arranged. I Wish I Knew is what I was talking about. And so I was talking about that one was just kind of spur of the moment. I knew I wanted to just play that tune, and I just kind of played. So it's not all the time that I work it all out, and it's not all the time that I don't. So it's both, Alexander. Both. That's usually the case with me. It's not usually a one or the other. It's usually a both and kind of situation. Both and. Let's see if we can get live here again. I don't know what's going on with Instagram. Well, that's too bad. So sad. Okay, but there's a lot of great people here hanging out. So there's some good questions as well. Glenn Mills says, hi, Nick, I enjoyed your take on I Wish I Knew. G major feels bright to me, as do most sharp keys. I wonder, though, about G flat major and F sharp major and harmonics. Does F sharp feel brighter than G flat? Ooh, that's a good question. Does F sharp feel brighter? Well, I know that I can definitely say that I don't feel like C flat really exists. I know technically it exists, but C flat feels to me like B, always. It always feels like B, so it always feels like a bright key to me. But I don't know, G flat. I think I hear things in G flat. And so and I hear that as a warm key, kind of similar to D flat major. I hear that. When I think of F sharp major, yeah, when I think of it more bright. But I think that would have more to do with like potentially like the different key centers you might go to, like from there. I don't know. That's a good question. Let me see. Let me play G flat. Yeah, I just hear it in G flat. That's the truth. I just hear it in G flat. When I started playing that and I started to think about it as F sharp, it was just coming off as F sharp, as G flat, not F sharp. So how often, I've probably only read maybe 10 things in my life in a real gig that are in F sharp major. Most people would put G flat major, I think, or no key signature at all. So one or the other. Good question though. Pat Brass. I'm going to go to Pat because Brian, I see a bunch of your questions. Pat Bass, sorry. How did you build your endurance for extended playing and extended playing in the higher range for a long time? Well, I'm sorry that this answer probably is going to disappoint you, and that is by doing it. If you want to play in the upper register for a long time, you have to play in the upper register for a long time. And you have to practice getting tired in the upper register and build up those muscles a little bit at a time. Same with endurance. You have to play a lot. If you want to be able to get through a 3-hour gig, you better practice for at least double that amount of time. And so really, and I've talked about this before, it's like during my undergrad, it was all about getting my horn on the face, keeping it there, playing every day, building up those muscles slowly. So you got to build them up. You got to put the time in. If you want to play in the upper register, be good at playing in the upper register, you got to play in the upper register. Put yourself in situations where you have to do it, playing lead in a big band, volunteering to play in an extra ensemble just to play lead, just to get that time and endurance on the face. Obviously doing it in a healthy way. But all through high school, I volunteered to play in as many ensembles as I could just to have time with that piece of metal right on my face. And yeah, so that's what you got to do, man. I used to what I like to practice, and I still talk about it, and I have many YouTube videos about this, is to work on playing in the upper register, play in the upper register, play melodies in the upper register. A favorite one for me is playing How Insensitive, an octave up, because it's mostly just long tones. So like How Insensitive is like this. Go up. Now I'm not really warmed up, so it didn't sound very good, but that's the idea. Just putting yourself in the situation and just playing. That's what you got to do. Put yourself in the situation and just play. That's the best advice I can give you, Pat. I hope that helps. Okay, I see a bunch of questions here. Favorite Duke album, favorite Duke song. Duke albums, I like the Suites. Far East Suite, New Orleans Suite, Such Sweet, Thunder Suite. Those are some of my favorites. Did you ever feel there wasn't enough time to master the instrument? Yes. Knowing all the scales, arpeggios, chords, and set out multiple tonguing. Legato tonguing, playing the entire range, flexibility. Yeah, I mean, of course, there's not like one way, and there's never enough time, but you got to do one thing at a time. One thing at a time, and you can practice some of these things multiple things at a time. So I try to encourage my students to do the same. I try to organize, let's work on all the major scales and arpeggios, and at the same time let's work on multiple tonguing, legato tonguing, staccato tonguing, and flexibility, kind of all at the same time. So I mean, you have to master the instrument before you can go out into the world and improvise freely. That's just how I feel. So putting the time in every day on the horn, on the fundamentals, to me is more important than getting to like the hottest jazz lick or learning some crazy scale. Like there's a body of information that makes up like probably 20% of information, possible information, but it's 80% of the information you need to play jazz. That principle applies, the 80-20 principle. Like, so major, melodic minor, diminished, altered, and you're golden. You can get through most any tune, because altered is also just melodic minor. So you can get a long way with diminished, major, and melodic minor. That's all you need. Maybe some augmented arpeggios you might need once in a while, or the whole tone scale or chromatic scale. But other than those things, you can kind of really handle it from there. Oh, Jens, he came over from Instagram. Thanks. I don't know what's going on with Instagram there. Just kind of crashed. Now it won't reconnect at all. So maybe it's just my phone. I'll just shut my phone off maybe and restart it. But have I heard of Doug Elliott? Of course I've heard of Doug Elliott. I don't know too much about his teaching. We had a weird encounter when I was in high school. And yeah, I've tried his mouthpieces, but they weren't my thing. I don't like all the like different elements of switching them around and everything, because that's just too much for my feeble brain to handle. I like to go with one thing, stick with it. As if you watch the interview we did with Marcinkiewicz, and by the way, this 6ES is back in stock. So if you've been wanting to buy one, the mouthpiece I play, the 6ES Marcinkiewicz, it's back in stock. So you can grab that if you like, nickfinzer.store. But so I was talking with Graham about all the different possibilities, and I'm like, man, I just need to stick with one. That's kind of my vibe. I'm not really much of a person to switch around, not because there's not other things that are good, but because I think you develop a certain understanding and relationship with that equipment over time, rather than just like switching around all the time. But there's some people that like that idea of like the right tool for the job, and I totally respect those people. And I think there's a lot of people that do a great job with that kind of approach. So it's to each their own, but I kind of stick with one mouthpiece, and it was not Doug's. Jens, how do you use your air as effectively as possible, and how do you use air as a function of embouchure? How do you use air as effective? I don't really think about it that way. I guess I think about the air in terms of making it do what I need it to do. I don't know about it as a function of embouchure, but maybe as a function of aperture. if you know what I mean. So what I would refer to as the aperture of your embouchure, I know there's a lot of words, is just the point where the air is actually coming through, and then you can control basically, like, is it a little cocktail straw size, or is it a regular size straw column of air, or is it wider than that? And depending on the note that you're playing, and depending on the range that you're in, depends on what size of airstream you want. And if you want a different kind of sound, like if you want to have a big sound in the upper register, you have to play in the upper register with a fast but wide air column to get that kind of in the upper register. But if you want a focused laser beam sound, it's got to be a small airstream. So maybe that answers your question, but that's how I think about it. And in terms of as effectively as possible, I don't really think that much about that. I think about doing exactly as much as I need to without more, like doing exactly as much as necessary and no more, like not being excessive, not excessive air, because that just creates problems. Just, this is what it takes to do this thing, and I just do that. I don't worry too much more about it after that. I don't know if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. All right, see if I can get back online here with Instagram eventually. Let's see. See a bunch of questions. Thanks for joining. AF Cubing. Oh, he asked, here's a quick question. Who's your favorite jazz musician? If I have to pick one, it's Duke Ellington. What are my favorite instruments besides trombone and piano? Bass. Here's a good question. Oh, let me do this one first. From Pat Bass. To follow up, do you have any experience with doubling? I've only doubled like on bass trombone and tuba. I think the best advice I hear people to give about this topic is to approach each instrument on its own. To approach each instrument like it's, it has its own challenges, and don't worry too much about like trying to do this, but slightly differently, like a trombone embouchure, but no, it's like, okay, I'm playing trumpet right now. I'm playing trumpet. I'm playing tuba. Now I'm playing tuba, and trying to get into the mindset that each one has its own things that you need to think about, things that you need to work on. So, but mostly my doubling experience comes from that. I'm trying to learn rhythm section instruments, piano, bass, drums, slowly but surely. But yeah, I don't know what's going on with my internet. Wi-Fi is not working. So that is. Alexander asks, have I ever listened to Nils Wogram? Yes, I have. He's got a new solo album out that I was checking out a couple weeks ago. He's great, man. Really incredible. Here we go. Another one is from Kevin. How do you work on practicing passages when you're having trouble getting some notes to speak? I think that you have to dig deeper than the passage. It's probably some deficiency in your technique that's not allowing the note to speak. That is the thing that I discovered about myself and discovered about the learning process for myself by studying with Steve Turre, is that he would be so detailed all the time, breaking it down. What's the root cause of the problem? So you're saying like a certain note isn't speaking. Well, is it that your airstream is not set up, or do you not have the right vowel sound set for that note? So it's never going to come out if it's not the right vowel sound. Or are you shifting and you don't know that you're shifting? Or are you doing some other thing that's preventing you from executing that passage? Is your double tongue not clean enough? Is it like sometimes and often when you have a leap in a double tongue, the second note doesn't come out? So like, have you practiced the second syllable on its own, the g or k? Does it strong enough to actually be its own articulation? Could you make that clean on your own, or on its own rather? There's a lot of things like that. What is the root cause of the problem? And so if you're having consistent trouble with a passage, it's probably a deficiency of technique. And a deficiency of a certain skill that you haven't practiced, or a certain interval that you haven't practiced with a certain tonguing, or a certain combination of notes you've never practiced before at a certain speed or something like that. So when I go through and like I'm practicing, and like related to the question about there's too many things to practice, you have to play everything that's possible. Like all the things that are feasibly possible that I would want to play, I got to practice that ahead of time to be free to execute it during an improvisation, at least in my opinion. So to do that, you got to think about triads, major, minor, melodic major, all the different scales, different scale patterns, and just experimenting around and playing with different techniques, different combinations of notes, playing different etudes. If you ever played like biche etudes, they're really challenging. So that's what I do. Think about what deficiency you might have that's preventing you from executing the line, because it's not the line that's the problem. Mostly. Ethan Cypress. What's up, Ethan? Congrats, I heard you won a job. The subject of the right horn for the right gig. How do you feel about like the Tom Irvin alto bone on lead in a big band vibe? It's not that weird of a question. I've never thought about this question before. I don't know that I've really checked out Tom Irvin. I have played in a section though with a guy named Scott Reeves, who's in New York, who teaches at City College, or did teach at City College. I think he's still there. But Scott is a great musician and educator. And he would play not alto trombone, but an alto, what would he call it? Alto horn? It was like a rotary valve alto trombone, basically. But it was an F, I think. So I've done it before. It's kind of cool if that's the sound. I think that's not the standard sound, but it is a sound. So if you're in a band that wants to, if you're in a band that like has a sound and is developing a sound and like a unique sound, then I think it's cool. If you're like just trying to play standard rep and recreate like Ellington or recreate Count Basie or even Gil Evans or whatever, like it's probably not the right sound. Probably not for Thad Jones, but maybe it is with Thad, with Bob Brookmeyer, maybe. But I mean, it's kind of similar. I mean, I'm into people doing different things. Like, so if they want that sound, I don't know if that answers your question though, Ethan. How do I feel about it? Yeah, I don't dislike it, but I don't like it if it's not called for, I guess. I would say that that's like an original music kind of sound, like my band, like, but people don't even know that that's an option, I don't play alto trombone. I'll just put that out there. I don't play that. It's too hard. No, it's not too hard. It's just more time. I think there's a couple recordings of Michael Deese playing on one of his records, like the same great vocabulary and technique that he has, but just on alto. It's crazy. Okay, Pat Bass, do you have any interest doing a masterclass Q&A with a college jazz band? Yeah, sure. I do that all the time. All the time, at least a couple times a semester, 3-4 times a semester. So yeah, sure. Let me know. I'll be there. Do I know who Rich Moore is? Rich Moore. No. Maybe you could give some more context. AF cubing, and maybe I do, but I don't think so. I was thinking of the tenor player, but I don't think I know who that is. Excellent. Let's see. I probably skipped some questions here. Thanks for coming over from Instagram, if you have joined us from Instagram. Let's see. Make sure I didn't lose any of the questions here from today. No, I think we're good. Feel free to drop in a couple more if you like, or else we'll kind of wrap this up for this week. Like I mentioned, the rhythm changes course is coming next week. If you've been thinking about digging into practicing rhythm changes, it might be a good help. We'll learn tunes together, practice together, all that kind of stuff. If you want to join the virtual studio, it's going to be it's a great time to do that. We have a virtual studio class right after this, and check it out on website, nickfinzermusic.com. You can see about all the learning stuff. But okay, I see another question from Drew. What's up, Drew? Drew came to the Jazz Trombone Boot Camp last year. Who's my favorite living valve trombone or bass trumpet player? Well, bass trumpet, really, I mean, I know basically two people that really do it improvising, like improvisers. Elliot Mason and Reggie Chapman both play great bass trumpet that I know. And then valve trombone players, man, just the guy that won the UNT BAC Jazz Trombone competition this last year, his name is Paco Andreo. He lives in Paris, and he's he's really incredible. Great young player. Check him out if you don't know him. Paco Andreo. He's really, really something, man. Oh, maybe we're thinking about the same person then. No, that's not it. That's not who I'm thinking of. But that's cool. Glad you got to have a guest at your school. That's nice that you can have people coming into your classroom. Excuse me. So yeah, all right. I'm really excited for the things coming out the next couple of weeks. Hope you can join in the virtual studio if you're looking for more things to practice and some ongoing feedback and that sort of stuff. I'm here for you, and I'm looking forward to hopefully moving forward and getting back to some more playing and gigging soon. So I hope you are too. I hope you're staying healthy, safe, and all of that. So have a great weekend, everyone. I'm going to sign off for now, and we will catch you next week. Each week we're back for the Q&A session Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So we'll catch you later.